Thank you. I call the Minister, Michelle Donelan, to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and let me begin by congratulating my honourable friend for South West Bedfordshire on securing this important debate. I know that he's been working particularly hard to highlight the concerns of his constituents and his local police force, that some children and young people placed in independent and semi-independent provision are being put at risk. I must begin by saying that I share his concerns and fears about the current state of affairs. As a recently appointed minister, this is one of my key priorities, and I want to reassure my honourable friend that this government is clear. It is completely unacceptable for any child to be placed in a setting that does not meet their needs and keep them safe. And I am considering the checks and inspections needed. Mr. Speaker,
Can I first of all join the Minister in saying what a brilliant speech that was from the honourable member. Absolutely fantastic. What I don't fully understand is the member talked about a wide range of local authorities who are putting these youngsters into such unregulated and unsatisfactory dwellings. Is the Minister able to tell us why we think this is happening? I think the member's come up with some brilliant solutions, but as someone new to this debate, I want to know why this is going on. It's completely unacceptable.
Thank you. I thank the honourable member for his comments. This is a complex problem. We do have a rising level of children in care, which is something that we do need to get to grips with, and those children are predominantly at an older age, which is resulting in an outcome as this. So there is strains on the supply, and I will get to the rest of it within my speech, if he is just patient with me, please. Mr. Speaker, there are a rising number of children in care, as I've said, and most of them do live in registered children's homes or foster care. However, the age of those children is rising, the demand on the system is increasing, and it is somewhat unprecedented. We are taking steps to help local areas to not only manage this, but supporting local authorities to improve the work that they do with families to safely reduce the number of children entering the care system in the first place, which is something that I'm particularly passionate about. Last week, I announced the investment of £84 million over 5 years to support 18 local authorities to do exactly this as part of the Strengthening Families programme. We have already provided funding through our £200 million Children's Social Care Innovation Programme, plus £5 million of this is specifically targeted at residential care. And for the most vulnerable who need secure provision, we are working to increase the number of beds in secure homes through our £40 million Capital Grants programme. We are funding local authorities with £110 million to date to implement staying put arrangements under which care leavers remain with their foster carers under 21. And we're also working with MHCLG to help local authorities develop more effective accommodation pathways for care leavers. Mr. Speaker, currently a small and growing number of children are placed in settings that are not registered with Ofsted. Some of these settings are not registered as they only provide accommodation and not care, although they may provide some level of support. They offer semi-independent living for older children and care leavers who are ready to live with some level of independence and can act as a stepping stone to adult life. But let me be clear, we set a very high bar for the level of care that must be provided by registered children's homes, and children who need this should not be placed anywhere else. I must say, though, that I've visited some excellent examples of semi-independent living, even in my own constituency, and there is a place for this type of provision when local authorities have taken the required steps to ensure that this high quality is appropriately used. However, I'm really tight on time and there is a lot of ground to cover. If I have time in a moment, I will. However, I believe that they are not all being used correctly, and the quality is simply not good enough across the board. Mr. Speaker, let me tell the House here tonight that I am determined to tackle this, because just as worrying is the placement of children in settings which are offering care but have not been registered with Ofsted. These are illegal, and Ofsted have the powers to prosecute these providers. And I invite my honourable friend to meet with me to flag up any homes he believes fit into this criteria, and any other member in this House to do the same, because these must be stopped. Permanent settings that deliver both accommodation and care must be registered and inspected by Ofsted. Another area that the Department is focusing on is what my honourable member brought up, the age of those in unregulated provision. I receive reports from Ofsted, local authorities and from police forces about some younger children living in unregulated, semi-independent provision. Let me be clear once again that I do not want to see a child under the age of 16 living in an environment without care. I am calling on all local authorities today to put their houses in order, to start with this issue and ensure that further action is taken. My honourable friend will know that if a child is placed in a semi-independent, unregulated setting, the local authority itself is required by law to ensure that the provision is suitable. My predecessor wrote to all directors of children's services earlier this year, reminding them of this duty. As stressed before, those providers should be registered, and those that choose not to be are acting illegally. This is where Ofsted is taking a lead, and they have ramped up their focus already over the past few months. Ofsted has conducted over 150 investigations over the last year alone. And this is an area that I will continue to apply pressure. Alongside this, Ofsted have tightened up requirements under their inspection regime for local authorities to share how they monitor children in unregulated provisions by increasing the data that they request from local authorities and issuing further advice to inspectors. However, I do recognise that despite our guidelines, recent research commissioned by the Department suggests that some local authorities are genuinely unclear about what is permissible and what is not in relation to the use of unregulated and unregistered provision. I want to ensure that there is no confusion at all, so I'm working with my department to ensure that there is new statutory guidance so that everyone involved in providing care to look after children and care leavers is absolutely clear of what is required on them. I know that the Honourable Member and the Honourable Member for High Peak also highlighted the number of children who go missing in unregulated provision. Not only is going missing a threat to a young person's safety, it can also be a serious flag to other things that are going on within their lives. Some local areas are already developing effective responses, but we need to ensure that all local areas recognise the threats to vulnerable children and young people and respond appropriately. On the 9th of May this year, the DfE announced a £2 million Tackling Child Exploitation Support Programme to provide dedicated advice and practical support. This programme will help areas to develop effective multi-agency responses to deal with things that will affect vulnerable children, including county lines. I want to take this opportunity again to thank the Honourable Member for South West Bedfordshire for securing this debate to highlight this crucial issue here today. It is clear to me that the current system leaves far too much room for variability and inconsistency across the sector as a whole. Whilst we have tried to address this, I recognise that there is still so much more to do and so much that can be done. Alongside the Education Secretary, I have been meeting with Ofsted and other members of the sector to determine where further action should be taken and the broader landscape of checks and inspections on the types of provision that we want to see. I know that local authorities do make decisions, but not in a lightly fashion. They are complex issues and they cannot be underestimated, but children must be placed in settings that are suitable for their needs. So, Mr. Speaker, I thank all members that contributed to this debate. I am aware that this is not a new issue, and it is right that it is at the top of my agenda as a newly appointed minister. Both the Secretary of State and myself are clear that the current system is completely untenable. We must get this right, and I will ensure that we get this right.